Hey guys, tonight we step barefoot into the velvet shadows of an imperial dining chamber in 19th century Ethiopia. You're not at some candlelit European banquet. There are no violins, no napkins, and definitely no silverware. What you get instead is the rhythmic scooping of richly spiced stews with fingers, the gleam of golden goblets, and a single, suspicious glare directed at a polished metal fork. The emperor shifts on his throne. Across the table, a European envoy twirls pasta with a delicate clink 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 that might as well be a battle cry. The silence in the room isn't about etiquette, it's the sound of a cultural line being drawn. You probably won't survive this story if you think history always makes sense. Because tonight, you're watching an emperor ban forks, not for hygiene, not for politics, but because they look just a little too French. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. Let's see who's tuning in from a fork-friendly time zone and who's eating injera right now. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stand at the edge of a courtyard lined with stone columns. The air smells like cinnamon, charcoal, and eucalyptus. Servants scurry past with silver trays of Watandoro tibs, their bare hands wrapped in cloth. It's not just dinner. It's a performance. One misstep, one breach of etiquette, and you might be reassigned to latrine duty by morning. The year is 1889. Emperor Menelik II has just returned from an awkward diplomatic dinner with a French delegation. Awkward not because of language, the emperor speaks fluent French, but because of forks. Shiny, Western, three-pronged forks. One French diplomat had insisted on using his fork to eat injera, Ethiopia's spongy flatbread. The emperor watched, stone-faced, as this visitor stabbed, twisted, and mangled his way through a national dish with the same metal prongs he might use to poke at a baked potato in Paris. There was a long pause. Then the emperor leaned over and muttered, "Is he trying to fight it?" The next day, a palace decree: no foreign utensils at state functions. The imperial court would dine the Ethiopian way, with clean hands, shared platters, and communal grace. Forks, it seemed, had crossed a line. Historians still argue whether Menelik truly banned forks altogether, or if this was more of a symbolic flex. But records from European travelers drop hints, British guests noting how forks were politely taken away and replaced with rolls of cloth, Italian envoys marveling at the emperor's precise technique for scooping lentils with just 3 fingers. But here's the twist: Ethiopia wasn't some culinary backwater. It had silverware. It had imported dining sets, monogrammed napkins, wine from Naples, and even coffee service with fine porcelain. The point wasn't access. The point was principle. To the emperor, the fork wasn't just foreign, it was invasive. It symbolized Europe's creeping influence, missionaries, military advisors, and merchants who brought more than just trade. They brought tastes, habits, mannerisms. And nothing said you should be more like us, quite like replacing your hand-carved wooden spoon with a silver fork embossed with French lilies. This wasn't the first time a utensil sparked rebellion. A century earlier, Ethiopian monks had protested the use of metal spoons in monasteries, claiming they dulled the sacred intimacy of eating holy meals with one's fingers. A fringe argument? Maybe. But it shows a pattern. In Ethiopia, food is about more than feeding. It's about tactility, about touch, about communion. You crouch near the hearth where injera is baking on a hot clay plate. A woman pats the batter with rhythmic slaps. You try to help. She laughs, then gently shoos you away. Use your hands later, not now, she says. And maybe that's the point. The fork doesn't just replace your hand. It replaces your place, your rhythm, Your ritual. Later that month, a Portuguese merchant arrives with a gift, a set of gold-trimmed tableware meant to curry favor with the emperor. Menelik accepts it with a smile, then has the box quietly handed to a servant. The next morning, that same set is seen reproposed, tiny spoons used to scoop incense, the salad fork bent into a makeshift hinge on a wooden door. Nothing is wasted. But nothing is revered simply because it shines. Back in Europe, the gesture was misinterpreted. A French newspaper mocked the ban as barbaric modesty. A British diplomat called it a refusal of civility. But the emperor's retort, written in Amharic, was swift: let those who do not share our table not tell us how to eat. You sit with the emperor's advisors now, older men with faces lined by sun and strategy. They argue over how far the policy should go. One suggests forks could be allowed in private. Another insists that even in private, habits form. Habits drift. And drift, in diplomacy, is dangerous. Outside, the young crown prince eats lunch with his fingers, mimicking his father. A servant offers a spoon. The boy says nothing. He simply keeps eating. You wake the next morning in a sunlit monastery perched along a ridge in the highlands. Bells echo through the dry air. Roosters crow. The monks are already gathering in the dining hall, heads bowed, robes trailing like fog. And there, in the center of the room, are the platters, lentils, greens, soft bread torn into uneven ovals. But no utensils. You're handed a warm cloth to clean your hands. Not a single fork in sight. This isn't rebellion. This is religion. The tradition of eating with fingers in Ethiopia is woven into Orthodox Christian life, not just practicality, but reverence. It's how Christ broke bread. How saints shared meals. Touch is devotion. Sharing is sacred. You take your place on a low stool. A young monk passes you injera, whispering, "Break it like a prayer." The man beside you smiles, scoops stew with his right hand, and nudges your elbow. This is how we bless each other. It's quiet, holy, awkwardly intimate. You can feel the history clinging to the folds of the cloth. Centuries earlier, when Portugal tried to convert Ethiopia to Catholicism, missionaries didn't just bring theology, they brought silverware. Forks were distributed at court alongside crucifixes. Colonial dinner etiquette crept in beside Christian iconography. But Ethiopian rulers pushed back. They accepted the rosaries, even the Latin chants. But not the forks. Mainstream historians mark Emperor Susenyo's I's reign in the early 1600s as a time of complex negotiation between cultures. He flirted with Catholicism. Converted. Then, in a dramatic reversal, rejected Rome entirely. Scholars still argue whether it was doctrine or dining that tipped the balance. The return to Ethiopian orthodoxy came with a return to tradition, including the meals. And let's not pretend the European habit was spotless. Forks weren't even common in Britain until the 1700s. In France, early adopters were mocked. One noblewoman called them fussy tridents for people afraid of gravy. So Ethiopia wasn't late to the party. It just declined the invitation. You ride now with a noble family through the countryside, bouncing in a wooden cart over hills flecked with acacia trees. They unpack their lunch, flatbread, yogurt, honeycomb, wrapped in cloth. The father laughs when you pull a spoon from your bag. He motions to the food, then your hand. If you trust the earth, he says, you don't need metal. That night, you eat under the stars with musicians and merchants. They tell stories about lions and border skirmishes, sultans, and saints. And in every tale, the feast matters. It's not just flavor, it's the setting, the touching, the passing. You eat from the same plate. You argue over who gets the last pepper. Someone hands you a roasted grain wrapped in leaf and says, "Use your hand, or it won't taste right." By now, you're realizing the fork wasn't banned because it was French. It was banned because it interrupted something. Because eating here isn't just an action. It's a choreography. A conversation. A contract. You're walking through a modern Ethiopian cafe in Addis Ababa. There's jazz playing. Wi-Fi humming. And right there on the counter, a glass jar of silver forks. Yes. Forks. A century has passed. Globalization has seeped into every corner. Kids scroll TikTok while eating sambusas. Businessmen cut grilled beef with serrated knives. And tourists? Well, tourists still ask for forks. But here's the thing, the ban never fully died, it just faded. Some say it was Haile Selassie who loosened the etiquette. Others claim it was a quiet compromise during international summits. No dramatic proclamation. Just a shift. One day, forks reappeared at formal dinners. Silver ones engraved with lions. A nod to heritage, Ot surrender. And yet, even now, in rural villages and homes built from earth and eucalyptus poles, most meals are still eaten by hand. Not out of necessity, but continuity. Tradition, after all, doesn't need a throne to endure. You visit a school where children are learning both French and Oromo. The teacher pauses mid-lesson and passes around bowls of shiro. The kids dive in with 3 fingers, laughing. You notice a plastic fork on the windowsill. Unused. Later, at a wedding banquet, you sit beside a scholar of cultural anthropology. He's chewing slowly, thoughtfully. When you ask about the return of the fork, he shrugs. It's not a defeat, he says. It's a filter. Some things pass through. Others stay out. He dips injera into a red sauce and adds, "You can taste resilience if you pay attention." Historians still argue whether the fork ban was ever fully enforceable. Some call it performative. Others call it genius. One researcher calls it the edible constitution, a way to write values into dinner. You like that? Because what started as a diplomatic snub became something else entirely. It became a symbol of autonomy, of intimacy, of saying, we choose how we nourish one another. And now, as the last ember fades from the brazier beside you, and your plate is wiped clean with a scrap of bread, you realize, the fork didn't lose. But it didn't win, either. It just found a place, off to the side. So tonight, as you drift towards sleep, carry this story with you, not like a polished utensil, but like a piece of warm bread torn from the edge of something ancient. Soft, sustaining, imperfect. May your next meal be shared. May your next moment be gentle. May your fingers, if they're clean, be enough. Good night.